All right, story time. That time that my Azure profile was hacked. So I was testing a web app, and during testing, I came across some clues that hinted at Azure AD. The first one, there were JSON web tokens. After decoding JSON web tokens, you could see in the payload like Azure group name. Like, oh, Azure group name. Yeah, that's a good clue. The other clue, though, is when you log in, I'd type in the username, and then as soon as I switched focus by clicking on the password field, the username field would automatically like prepend this domain name in all caps with a backslash. I was like, wow, for anyone who's ever logged into anything on Active Directory or Microsoft, you're like, that looks a lot like Active Directory. That's another good clue that there's something going on. So at this point, I reached out to a tester at BHS and like, hey, I got these creds for a web app. I think they might tie into Azure AD, but I'm not sure. An easy way I can figure it out? He's like, just log into the Azure portal. It's a good idea. I'll do that. So I logged into the Azure portal with the creds, and it worked. I started looking around a little bit at my own profile, and I was surprised to see, like in that screenshot there. And by the way, all of this story here, it's heavily derived from a test. It was a real test. So I didn't want to have too many details or any details actually from the customer. So this is all, it's simulated, but heavily derived from an actual test. And so I'm logging in, looking at my profile, and I see in my profile, my display name, like scanner was here. Like, oh, wow, okay. It looks like my scanner was able to change my display name during scanning. That's neat. And my username at this point is nobody special in Azure AD. But I'm also thinking to myself, why? How can my scanner change my display name, but I can't? Like, I'm logged into Azure AD right now, and I'm getting this, why can't I edit? And there's nothing, I don't have permissions to change my own display name. Like, what gives? So I started thinking about it, and I remembered, like, oh yeah, on like day 1 or day 2, I'd scanned the app with admin creds, the admin portion. Don't do this in production. This is in a staging environment. And so within the app for the admin, there was a feature to update user settings in the app, like display name and passwords and stuff like that, right? So it got me to thinking, if the service account that had privileges to update my display name in Azure AD and my password, I bet it's got privileges to update display names and passwords for other users in this Azure AD tenant. So I went looking for the request to change passwords inside of the web app, and I found it, and it looked a lot like this. And that was it. Username and password. You get to specify the username that we're going to change the password on. And like, yeah, I wonder what happened if I put like an Azure AD admin username in that field right now. Would it change their password? So the next step in testing out that theory, we got to go spelunking in Azure. There's lots of options when you're spelunking in Azure to hunt for a good admin to compromise. To start out, you want to look at the users that are in there, look at group memberships, look at applications they've been assigned to, look at assigned roles. And when you think of assigned roles, think assigned administrative roles. That means they can probably do administrative stuff inside of Azure AD. If you've never logged into the Azure portal before, this is kind of what it looks like in that screenshot on the right. I'd recommend just clicking on the Azure Active Directory icon that should be in the left slide out. If you don't see that, just go into the search bar here in the upper right-hand corner and type in Azure Active Directory, and it should start coming up for you. So spelunking a little bit further in Azure AD, eventually come across a user named somebody special in Azure AD. And somebody special in Azure AD has one assigned role. And when we look at that assigned role, we see it happens to be global administrator. Global administrator in Azure AD is kind of like domain admin in Azure AD. They can do just about anything. So this is a good admin to compromise. So to exploit this, we're going to jump back to the web app, which is that screenshot in the lower left. And I took the password change request and take out nobody special, put in somebody special, send the request, get a response back. success. Bada bing, bada boom. I've got global admin privileged at this point. So the whole point of sharing all that is going back to one of the things I said towards the very beginning is start to think about like lessons we've learned over the years. Like don't give a lot of privileges to that service account that's running your web app. Well, in this case, there's a very privileged account that was running the web app. It could change passwords on other accounts inside the tenant. So just keep that in mind as you're testing things that are hosted in the cloud or apps, that is. All right, and finally, I have a couple of things for your consideration, things that I think about from time to time and will research, time permitting. The first is this thing I came across in an app test a few months ago called Azure Business to Consumer. It sounds a lot like AzureAD. It's not quite AzureAD though, but it's interesting. So Azure B2C is basically a way that if there's, say, an organization builds a web app that they want customers to be able to authenticate to, and they built it on Azure and they don't want to do anything like custom whatever, they can use Azure B2C to give customers like semi-trusted users access to this app. If you look at so one thing that jumped out for me when looking at Azure AD B2C is these are objects inside of Azure AD. It's kind of maybe a variant of it, Azure AD B2C. There are users. It's very similar in structure to Azure AD, but it's not quite. And typically, by default anyways, Azure B2C accounts or users don't get access to the Azure portal by default. So some of the clues to see that you have Azure B2C in play, you're going to see requests going to a subdomain of b2clogin.com. Oh, by the way, I meant to mention this earlier. If anyone knows some sweet tricks for hacking Azure B2C or escalating from an Azure B2C account, drop that in the Discord because I'd love to know. But it's on my list of things to look into. Okay, jumping back to this. If you see subdomains of b2clogin.com, then that's a good indication that you're dealing with Azure B2C. If you see URLs that are prepended with b2c_1_, that's also another good indicator. So I went through the pain of setting up B2C thing once and found out that, one of the steps is you create these user flows inside of Azure. And when you do that, the Azure B2C automatically prepends that string to these URLs that are exposed to the app. So if you see that, that's another indicator that you've got Azure B2C in play. And also, again, if you see the string Azure, like that's another good indicator and thread to pull to see if you've got Azure B2C or maybe Azure AD stuff going on. And then finally, looking for AWS S3 buckets in Burp. Couple of things. One, if you're testing an app and say it's hosting a resource, some sort of document that it pulls in, and maybe it's like 4 or 5 directories deep or whatever, and it pulls that in, try taking that URL for the third-party resource and just navigating to the root. You might get a response that looks like what you see in the screenshot. This is from Google. It's public. It's not confidential or anything. So that's one way. If you see that XML stuff and the name of the bucket is right there, test2. And at this point, you could use Cloud Enum or AWS CLI to start looking through that AWS S3 bucket, find any secrets and stuff. You can also use the JS Miner extension in Burp Suite. It'll find the buckets for you. If you want to search manually, you could also look for the string aws.amazon.com. Maybe the app is like dynamically generating links to S3 buckets and stuff. That might be another way that JS Miner might miss. All right, finally, I want to leave you with a few resources to learn more about cloud hacking and the intersection with app testing. So first of all, definitely check out Anti-Siphon's training opportunities. We've got some great classes. Bo's got his Breaching the Cloud. BB's got Modern Web App Pen Testing. Those will both be great. You take the knowledge of those and you can find some really interesting attack paths on your next pen test or bug bounty hunt. Cloud methodology. Bo's also put out a nice cheat sheet there for cloud pen testing. I've used this. This is just great to get like the ideas rolling. When you see hints of cloud infrastructure, you can look at that and think, oh yeah, I need to go grab that tool, or oh yeah, I need to think about looking at this. Nice cheat sheet. So there's the links for you. And finally, that is a small subset of all the cloud tools that are out there. They're good tools that have worked for me or other testers at BHIS. I strongly recommend you use some of those. There's lots out there, but that could help get you started anyways. With that, that brings me to the end of my presentation. If there are no more questions, that's all I have. And I thank you all very much for coming today.
Very cool. No, that I didn't know a lot of that stuff. And I was going to throw in your notes on Cognito are fantastic. Before I was here, I've worked for many, big multi-billion-dollar companies doing, from security engineering to offensive work. The number of companies that are leveraging Cognito to be an authentication front end for legacy backend apps is massive.
Oh, so, that's good to know.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going to check the Discord here real quick. If there are any last questions here, we'll bring them over to Sean. Let's take a look here. Let's see. I know we've got a couple folks in there looking around. Do we have any other questions? We got a lot of good memes and a lot of thanks. I don't believe we're going to need disable alerting. Is there any sort of alerting on what gets copied out of that function? I'm not sure. So Whiny Tarantula, if you could kind of throw in there, because that's kind of maybe point in time. I don't know exactly which alerting piece you're talking about.
I caught that one. It's a good question. It was during the AppStream demo, as data is being copied out of the AppStream to your local host. It seems like a good choke point, right? To where you catch any data that's coming in or out of. So it's a good question.
Okay.
But sorry, I don't have the answer.
Okay. Very good. Cool. So if you do have any questions, please go ahead and tag me. Also, the slides have been made available over in the slides resources channel. So if you want those are available now. That said, please hang out with us a little bit more because we've got Brian here who, if you're interested, stick around. You can hear more about what BIHS does. Also, don't forget, over in the Discord, Ryan dumped this link in. We have the anti-siphon Hackdown, the most offensive conference to ever offensificate. Check that out because there's going to be free talks, all red team focused. And, there's also training, or if you feel like speaking, you can go to that link for the anti-siphon hackdown and submit a CFP. And that CFP closes soon on January 31st. So get those in now. So if you're still here, if you're in the sound of my voice, thank you for joining. Sean, thank you so much for covering those items and sharing what you've learned about getting our head into the cloud. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're still sticking around, Brian here, again, not related to John, is going to share some information about the things that we do outside of these webcasts and comments and stuff.
And I do want to say I am going to deliver on my promise of not super embarrassing pictures of John.
Yeah, but for the 591 that are still around.
I do have some pictures of John. I have some high school pictures, some yearbook pictures. So that's going to be a little treat at the end. That's the way I hook people to stay on and listen to my very poor salesmanship. But yeah, Ian.
Capitalism. So
what's that?
We do suck at capitalism. So
I'm pretty bad at this. And I think that's why John hired me. That and nepotism, but I think mostly because I'm bad at this and he likes it when people are bad at it. So makes it a little easier when the back end of things and all of our testers do a pretty good job and can actually follow through on the poor salesmanship on things on the front end. So
well, let's get salesy for a minute.
All righty. To the 550 people that are still on that hate themselves but love capitalism just enough.
Just enough.
So what do you want? Do you want to ask me any questions? Do you want me to just kind of try to riff on something that I did an anti-cast earlier this week, or not an anti-cast, like a active countermeasures one earlier this week. So I can kind of do the same thing we did on that one if you want. But if you have any questions for me.
we've talked about, the anti-siphon hackdown and whatnot. Why don't you talk a bit about the pen test services that we have? Because we're heading, into the beginning of the year. People are going to have a lot of compliance things that need to get done. I know budgets are still getting formalized, but tell us a bit, somebody needs to have somebody like Sean come in and beat up their cloud to find out, how the bad folks get in. What do they get from BHIS?
So the first thing I always like to talk about is not necessarily like the service themselves, but I always like, so this is the thing. So we have a few years ago when I first got started in this thing back in like 2017, 2018, when John brought me in, he had me listening on calls. They were not sales calls by any stretch of the imagination. What was really interesting about them is by and large, they were held in kind of a very similar manner as like our pre-show banter. And I know that may seem weird to get on a quote unquote sales call and to be like, just kind of shooting the breeze type thing. But we have a couple of guys that are on the team now that I'm doing 1,000 other things for the company, Tom and Logan, who handle the pen testing side of stuff as far as the scoping calls go. And I've had them jump in on a few pre-show banter calls. And this is what I literally tell them, like when people come on, I want them to feel that they didn't leave pre-show banter. They jumped into like an extended pre-show banter specifically about them, about what they're looking for. And so it's like some weird things that we do. We don't do any of these things where it's like somebody comes to us and they're like, hey, I need these 10 things. I've never had a pen test before, but I want a red team. We're going to tell them, yeah, that red team, that's a great test. It's really fantastic, but you really shouldn't be starting with a red team. And we have people that like will literally request and say, we want a red team. The first test we want is a red team. And we're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Same thing with like, just pure phishing campaign type tests. Like we want you to come in and just phish our users. And there's better things I think we advise people to do to spend their security dollars elsewhere that's more appropriate for where they're at. So the one thing I will tell you is that's like step one. You're going to get on a call and you're going to have just a regular conversation with people, and none of us are commission based. That's kind of another thing that I really love to point out is when you talk with one of us for scoping, they don't make a bunch of extra money by selling you a bunch of extra services. So they're really 100% geared towards, well, what do you actually need as far as testing goes? The other interesting thing that I think we do is we involve our testers in our scoping. So if at any point we're confused, which happens often for sales guys, about what we want to like scope your test out as, whether it's a web app or cloud or anything, really, we will bring on our testers to talk with you before you even like get a document sometimes, or before you sign a statement of work. And what we've got, and this, I know that may seem, well, yeah, you should do that. But I've talked with other sales guys at other firms, and that stuff doesn't happen a lot. A lot of them, like, you let your testers dictate how much time they test something? Like, are you mad? Are you insane? Yeah. So we get them pretty heavily involved. I see Ben kind of nodding his head here because we probably involved him enough on a lot of those types of things. And really, so like we do other things, like, we do obviously like rules of engagement call, 3-4 weeks ahead of time, where the tester talks to you about what the test is going to do. We make sure everybody's on the same page. And then the test is conducted. We give you the report. We can sit down with you, debrief with you on the report, things like that. But I mean, as far as the types of services we do, it's literally everything under the sun that you would consider a pen test. We will do for you. Everything from your standard external, internal network pen test stuff, all the way to, C2 pivot, assumed compromise type stuff, to full-blown red teams, to web apps, to device testing, to OT, SCADA, all those things under the sun we do. So, yeah, I'll kick it back to you, Ian. What other questions you got for me? This is easier if it's a back and forth banter.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no. So I'm going into the Discord here to see if folks had other questions. We do have a go back. So one of the questions that was asked, and this is for Sean. Let me find it again here. I said we'll get you an answer. Oh wait, where was that? I was tagging it. Sorry if I missed it. Is JS Miner available in the community edition or just pro? And that's from Orthicon.
That's a great question. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to look that up and I'll drop that in the Discord.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Cool. So, the other thing that I'd love to hear us, give a little more information on here real quick while we still have a few folks is the anti-siphon on-demand training. So a lot of people know the live trainings that we do. Maybe they've gone to a B-Sides, maybe they've come out to Wild West Hack and Fest, maybe they've taken it live online. But they don't realize that there's an entire course catalog that you can take at any time. So
the on-demand stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually going to bridge the two of them. I'm going to riff on what you just said, and then I'll start showing John's pictures after this. 2 questions is enough for salesy talk for people to endure. So the one thing I always like to kind of point out with people, and I don't know if everyone fully kind of, I guess, gets the way we do things here at BHIS and Anti-Siphon. So you can go to the antisyphontraining.com website, and you can see there's a bunch of our pen testers have done training. A lot of them have their roots in the blue teaming side of things. So there's some blue and purple teaming side like training that's on there as well. But one of the big things that John talks about whenever he brings on anybody who does a class or anything like that is, like, let's say, for example, I went to John tomorrow and it's like, hey, John, I'm really interested in incident response. So I want to write a class on incident response. He would tell me, no, you're an idiot, go away. The reason why is I've never done incident response. I don't currently do incident response. I don't have it in my history. I don't really have any certifications around incident response. What I'm trying to get at with that is John has the people who are doing the doing the training on our website for anti-siphon training. They have to be currently doing what they're doing, what they're training on. And that way they're up to date. They're currently, they're not talking about stuff from Windows XP for how they're going to hack it, right? So just stuff from, a decade plus ago. And that's actually really true with, it's kind of my back segue to the pen testing side of things. Sean, he kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the webcast, where these are some of the things he's been doing lately on pen tests. And then he's going to showcase those cool things on webcasts. And what I think is really cool about that is, I don't know if people 100% connect the dots unless, and because I didn't really connect the dots until recently, where you get on these webcasts and you see people like Sean or even Ben and I don't know if John Malone's done a webcast or not, but any of our pen testers who get on here and show you guys this cool stuff, and we have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people on these webcasts, you're seeing the stuff that we're doing on pen test engagements. You're seeing the things that we found really cool testing, and then we decided we want to share that with the community. And I think what's really cool about that is it just goes to show you the level and the quality of our pen testers in a lot of ways, because when we bring people on here at BHIS, as far as pen testers go, one of our big stipulators for all of this stuff is like, stipulators a word? I'm going to roll with it. Stipulators for bringing on testers is they kind of have to have a little bit of that, like, teacher's mindset or educator's mindset, because if you don't, and what we've learned is, like, the people who do that, you end up getting super high quality reports. Because they're already in the mode of, like, knowledge transfer. Like, I'm doing this cool thing. I can't wait to tell the customer about this, or I put it on a webcast or a blog or something one day. And you guys kind of get to see the fruit of that labor for free on these webcasts. But these are the cool things that we do on our pen test engagements as well. And that also directly translates over to the training side of things as well, which, like, so for example, the on-demand training catalog, we have a bunch of classes there. A lot of our testers have put things in there. And those are John's whole mantra with this stuff is he wants, like, SANS quality level training at Udemy and Cyber level pricing for this stuff. And so that's kind of the other kind of fruit of all that labor of bringing on the right people that like to share and transfer knowledge. You get it, you see it in the pen test, you see it in the reports, and you get to see it in the training classes that we put out there as well.
Cool. No, I do want to finish with 2 thoughts here. And one, we had a conversation in another meeting around price holds for the year. Talk about that.
Yeah, we are. So just kind of with everything that's going on. So we've been talking with a lot of firms, a lot of customers, and we've been noticing, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed this in your organization or not, but I'd love to hear if it is. People are kind of still waiting around for their budget to come around for 2023. We've been hearing that a lot. And so we kind of got this feeling like, with the way everything's going with budgeting and the economy and inflation or whatever you want to view it all as, and the way everything's going. So we decided to actually hold, instead of upping our rates, which we normally do at the beginning of the year, we decided to hold our rates just because we know that people are going to be going through a little bit more of a crunch. And we've always had this whole desire we don't want to just do pen testing for the Fortune 100 companies. We want to make sure that the mom and pop or the small organizations or the one-man security teams that are out there, I get on enough calls with those guys where it's just like, it's just me. I'm the security guy. And you know, with the budget isn't exactly great, we've always kind of prided ourselves on being able to hit that price point for them too. And so in the kind of the realm of all of that, we are holding our 2022 rate for the first quarter of 2023.
Nice. Yeah. So if you're trying to get your budgets together and you're trying to, you know, get your pen test scheduled, now's the time to reach out to consulting at BHS, or I'm sorry, blackhillsinfosec.com to say, hey, how can I get on the agenda? How can I get on the radar? Let's have a conversation here. So Brian, that's all awesome. So thank you. We'll stop with the salesy stuff. We'll cut that off. But thank you for the almost 400 of you that continue to hang out. Brian, what? Oh yeah, well,
I cannot share my screen. It won't. Oh wait, let me see here. Oh, here we go. Are we ready? Are we ready? I think I got the 300. Let me see if I can.
Everyone, get your screen captures ready. Screen capturing tool. Look at this.
This is beautiful.
Look at this. It is. I was too busy like responding to other in chats, but I was going to take that first photo, throw it into Midjourney, and say like, make me a Midwest romance novel cover.
I like that he's holding that little piece of wheat. It's just it's important. This one's good. It's pretty straightforward. The last one is my favorite though. It is the him playing guitar. Guitar was very important to him. So we tried to find the other one. Melissa and I were scrambling this entire webcast to try to find a better one. The other one that I have is my favorite. It's the same guitar, and it's the picture of him staring at the camera, and his reflection is superimposed on the guitar's.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was a really good one too. So, but I figured I better deliver if I'm going to make people sit around and listen to me talk about salesy stuff.
Maybe that's what we do. Like we say, hey, if you'll sit around and talk about, you know, and listen to us talk about the things that allow us to do what we do for the community, we'll give you John Strand blackmail. Like, and you stick around and you get a new like nice thing, like story about some really embarrassing thing he did when he was a kid.
I got so many of those, but I some of them, guys, I really genuinely have to clear them with him and see if he's okay with me saying some of them. But if you come to CactusCon, I might just say them anyways, because I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's right. So Brian's going to be out there at CactusCon, and a bunch of the rest of the team is out there setting up now. So if you're in Arizona, stop by and say hi. So again, that's the webcast. You know, make sure as well you check out the Spearfish General Store if you want cool swag. Join, you know, to represent the cult community outside of, you know, the virtual space, and then as well. We do have a couple other webcasts and things coming up soon. So tomorrow we're going to be recording the CoinSec podcast, talking about crypto and smart contracts and all that stuff. So you can tune in for that. We've also got an upcoming series that you're going to want to check out. You'll see some notifications about that shortly, that we're calling the BHS Testers Notebook, and Chris Trainer will be joining us. And one of the things we've decided to do is Twitch stream the making of the sausage. So if you want to see how all this content is made, you can tune in and watch us as we flub lines and do all that kind of stuff. And then that will be edited out into a series where you can see how the testers configure things and do things like, and this one's going to be on Burp Suite extensions, their favorites and why they use them and how they use them and what the outputs look like. And then finally, Carrie Roberts, one of our anti-siphon instructors, a maintainer on Atomic Red Team, they are going to be doing a webcast that we're going to be calling, not a webcast, a series of videos, same vein, watch on Twitch. Watch out for that notification coming out soon. But this one's called Anti-Siphon Office Hours, where we will have an actual student and the instructor, and you'll get to watch as they kind of struggle bust their way through a lab live, you know, no edits, no nothing. And then later those will be released in little bursts. So if you like to see, again, how the sausage is made, you want to hear from some of the folks learning the same things you do, well, keep an eye on your email and notifications, or sign up for our newsletters.
We did have one more question in here.
Oh, yeah. What's the question? Yes.
For me. And I'm actually going to bring Sean and Ben in on this one, because I'd like to get your opinion on it. The question is, I was wondering if BHAS is offering a pen testing as a service similar to Horizon 3.ai or Cobalt.io. What's your guys' opinion on that?
I have opinions.
Okay, I want to hear yours too.
Yeah, sure. So I hate the term pen test as a service, because a penetration test or a red team exercise You absolutely cannot automate it. It's a hill I will die on. And the reason is you have to be able to look further. If you knew what to script to test a compromise, is that really a pen test, right?
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't mean I don't think those things have value.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, they do have value. You can create that base level of noise to figure out if your controls are working and have like a constant control validation. Yes, these 5 tests that I run prove the WAF works, or at least prove that they work based on our tests.
Yeah.
But that's not going to let you figure out exactly how an attacker will do that, because they'll find they're getting blocked and they'll go to the next thing, which you don't have a script for, you don't have a test for. So I shy away from the pen test as a service nomenclature. But if you were to say, what about continuous controls validation or security chaos engineering and using these tools, I'd say absolutely. Those are
and the one thing we're building out right now is more like continuous red teaming type, like where you can come to us and for like a whole quarter or a whole 6 months or a whole year, we'll do ongoing pen testing against the organization on an ongoing continuous basis. I know that was really repetitive, but I really wanted to hit those points home. It's not something where we go in and we do like a 4 or 5 week red team with 3 or 4 testers and then we're gone. It's something where we'll hit you over a long period of time. And so that's something we're actually developing right now as well, as more of that ongoing continuous aspect of things. Similar, but obviously the kind of mixing of both worlds, so to speak. Ben, Sean, you guys got any opinion on those?
Yeah, I mean, like we have pen testing because, and the very basic analogy that I've always used is you've got 2 systems. One's like really insecure, but there's no sensitive data on it. You got a super secure system, but that's where all the sensitive data is. The pen tester will compromise this and then get to the secure system. A scanner, automated service, whatever, it can't really make those kind of leaps to know to leap from this thing it just compromised. I need to go here. The humans can do that, better. A skilled pen tester can, but a machine has a really hard time making those kinds of decisions.
Or even like the business context. Like when we do ROE calls, I always try and understand like what that client views as mission critical assets, what they're most afraid of, and like taking those making those like specific targets, or like understanding the general greater business context of where those assets live in an environment, I feel like is important. And additionally, like a pen test really is a very particular point in time assessment of the environment and its configuration. So like, yeah, you can do it multiple times or try and script it out and reiterate it, but like, it's always changing. Stuff's introduced on a regular basis, and the whole point of doing a pen test is what was it like at that one point in time that we did the test.
Yeah,
and then going from there.
I think it'd be really interesting for us to do, and I feel like, I don't want to say this is pandering, but there's another word for it. I can't think of it. I feel like it would be a really good idea for us at some point in the very near future to do a chat GPT or hack. There's somebody put in there hack GPT.
Yeah, sure, put in there.
I know it's like the buzzword that's going around everywhere right now with chat GPT, but I would like to do something around I would love to know John's opinion of like, well, what does he see chat GPT for in the cybersecurity realm at its absolute best case scenario? How does that stack up against the future of penetration testing or anything like that down the road? I think that would be a really interesting topic for us to kind of explore and flesh out, but I don't know if that's on the roadmap or not.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's probably, yeah, exactly. Probably a good place to wrap things up as people are on. So for the almost 300 diehards that are even willing to sit here and listen to us talk about what we do here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sticking out. Thank you for being part of the community. And we hope to see you show up again. So Sean, anything you'd like to end your webcast with? This is your show.
No, and just hopefully somebody got something out of this. It was a lot of fun. Great hanging out with everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. So for myself, Black Hills Information Security, Ryan, John, Brian, Ben, thank you for joining. And Ryan, burn it with fire. Take us out, man.
Bye, buddy.